is our privilege to welcome Dr. Ruth Vanita, a distinguished author, academician and cultural historian who through her research and writing on Indian literary traditions has explored how stories, poetry and historical texts preserve cultural memory and shape the way societies interpret their history and identity. Dr. Vanita began her career as a professor of English at the University of Delhi and later taught at the University of Montana. She co-founded and co-edited Manushi, one of India's pioneering feminist journals, which has contributed significantly to discussions on women's rights and social reform. Her recent book, On the Edge, 100 Years of Hindi Fiction on Same-Sex Desire, received the Ladli Award for Gender Sensitivity in 2024 for its powerful exploration of representation and identity in Hindi literature. Through her books, essays, and research, she challenges established conventional norms while advocating for greater inclusivity, respect for diverse identities, and expressions of love, specifically focusing on relationships in religious, historical, and cultural contexts from a gender perspective. We are honored to have her with us today as she leads this author talk titled Literature and the Making of Cultural Memory. Now please join us in watching a short video dedicated to the guest. Gentlemen, please join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Ruth Vanita for a thought-provoking session.
Inviting me. Nice to be in my father's city, Chennai, and where I used to come every summer because my focusing on my two novels and my book of poems. When we talk about remembering, so personally, of course, we know that we forget much more than we remember. Yeah, if I ask you what were you doing on this day 2 months ago, unless you look up a calendar and so on, you won't remember. So what is it we do remember? We remember certain intense moments, heightened moments in life, whether these are of love or grief or joy or whatever, that's what we remember. Similarly, cultural memory, when we talk about the idea of India, what is it we remember and what is it we forget? We forget much more than we remember. We remember what we were taught in history. For example, to take my recent novel, A Slight Angle, it's set in the 1920s, historical novel. Now, 1920s, if you are asked, you will know about Gandhi, you will know about Bhagat Singh, right? But there will be many things I didn't know till I wrote this. There will be many things we don't remember, like the Mopla riots in Kerala, which also happened in the 1920s, or when Bhagat Singh tried to shoot a British officer and by mistake he shot the wrong one, but there was an ordinary police constable there called Chanan Singh doing his job, so he ran after the assassins and they shot him. So nobody remembers him. He's a person. I'm just giving you examples, right? My questions throughout my work has been, what have we forgotten about our history? And to try to recover a small part of that. Okay, let me start with talking about personal memory, because poetry, my poetry at least, lyric poetry, is about personal memory and some of it is about cultural memory too. In this morning, Mr. Hari Kumar was talking about bhoot, ghosts, and the word bhoot, which is in Sanskrit and a lot of modern Indian languages too. Bhuta Kala means past tense. So what is a bhoot? It's different from the English ghost. Ghost means a spirit. But bhoot means the past. When we are dreaming or we are remembering a person who is, let's say, dead, or a person whom you were very close to and has left and you don't have any interaction, you remember that. It's the past. You are haunted by the past. That's what bhoot means, right? So let me read a poem. Saris. Your birthday tomorrow, I must go sari shopping. Is it too late? Evening rain threatens. At the window, a black crinkly line spreads upward, fills my view. Black air, black sky. No, I can't go. Then suddenly, blue again. I leave the tiny flat where we live, the four of us. In a post-train coolness, catch an empty bus. At a CP corner, two shops face each other. One is closing. Amid reds, mustards, magentas, I look for the pastels you like, saris draped over my lap. Cold, Is my mother alive? I think, half awake, calculate. Is it May? No, it's not. And now I'm chilled through. So my mother's birthday is in May, and the dream was about remembering her and the saris and the colors she liked. Let me give you an example from a slide. In the Panchatantra, the whole thing is a dialogue between five friends who are all animals, but different animals of different species. So friendships overcome the differences that we have, right? Marriage, usually we marry people who are like ourselves, but friendships, we have friendships with people who are different from ourselves. And Indian literature, I think, is built on this. Okay, let me talk now about I'll come back to Delhi, Bombay and Calcutta. It tells the story of a group of young people who are friends and relatives, and they are exploring new professions, relationships, new ways of life. Or what is new about the 1920s? What are the new technologies? The cinema, for example, is very new at this time. Airplanes are being developed at this time. The first flying club was in Bombay in the 1920s. So my young people. There is a girl called Kanta, and she is a Hindu girl who marries a Christian boy who is a jazz musician. Now, if you just think about this, his parents obviously don't like jazz musician. Like, where is he going to make any money? Her parents also don't like this. They don't like it for various reasons. So both the families don't approve of this marriage. Now, Kanta's brother, Sharad, he is a son, they are Kayasthas, he's a son of an accountant, bureaucrat, that's what the community is. But he wants to design jewelry. So he wants to go in a totally different direction, again, which his parents think this can be a hobby, but this won't make you any money. Now he falls in love with his English professor, Abhik. His sister is married a Christian, but she at least manages to marry. But he's in love with a man, he can't tell anyone about this, right? So there's his story. And then Abhik, who's the teacher, he is afraid of the whole thing, of his feelings. So he runs away from Delhi for 5 years to his native place and stays there. So it's about this separation. Their story is about that. Then Robin's sister, Sheila, is an independent woman. She's a Gandhian. She becomes a Gandhian, which her parents don't approve of. And she moves to Sabarmati Ashram. But while she is there, she develops doubts about some of Gandhi's teachings. You can think of many things about which you might have doubts. Then she leaves the ashram after some time, moves to Bombay and lives with Rita, who is a Jewish actress. I don't know if you know, but the early movie stars in Hindi movies were either Anglo-Indians or Jews, the first actresses. Nadira is a name you may know. So I also show that world, the Jewish world, the Parsi, different worlds that were there at the time, right? So at this time, there are also some writers whose works I had translated from the 1920s. One of them is a Hindi writer, Mahadevi Verma. So she is a minor character in the novel. Ugra was another writer whose works I have translated, this guy. Now, he's a very interesting guy. He was also a Gandhian. And in 1920s, 1924 actually, he wrote a short story about homosexuality, male homosexuality, to condemn it, not to praise it, to condemn it, to say it's a bad thing. And he called it chocolate, and chocolate in Hindi. And all the other writers said, you can't write about this topic. Why are you writing about it? Everyone will think this is what you are doing. So he was a guy who always wanted to fight with everyone, and he said, they're telling me not to write, I'll write some more. So he wrote 7 more stories and published the whole thing as a book. Now, everyone criticized him for it, except for one writer, Nirala. Everyone criticized him for it. But interestingly, I learned from a modern gay activist, Ashok Rao, he told me that all people who are now old, but at that time were young, they heard about this book that somebody is writing about our lives, male men whom we would call gay now, but that was not the word then. They went and they lined up around the block to buy this book, and the book sold out in a week and was ready to reprint. So then people who didn't like the book, they went to Gandhi and said to him that this book is being written, this is a bad book. So Gandhi read it and he said, I think he is condemning this. What's wrong with it? So they said no. They read it out to him. One famous Hindi writer went and read it out, read from the book to Gandhi and said, look, if he didn't like this, why is he calling it chocolate? Everyone likes chocolate, so it makes it attractive. He should have called it ghaslate. Ghaslate in Hindi means kerosene oil. So he is inflaming people and he should call it ghaslate. From this comes a whole, in Hindi literature, if you read the history of Hindi literature, there is a school of writing called ghaslati. Ghaslate, okay, that comes from this book. And Ugra got so fed up that everyone is condemning me, so he left and he went to Bombay. He stopped writing fiction. He started writing film scripts. So that's what, then there's a whole story which goes on, but I won't go into that. Yeah. So I look at how these things evolve and how these relationships and friendships, what you hide from your friends, what you tell your friends, the secrets, all of this, the novel explores. I'll just read a little bit. And by the way, these books are all outside, so I can sign them if you're interested in buying. So this is towards the end of the book. So Sharad, who was in love with Abhik, and Abhik has disappeared for 5 years. So Sharad goes to a party. This is Sharad speaking. I'm standing alone observing various groups when I spot my parents again at a little distance. My father leaning towards my mother to listen amidst the hubbub to what she is saying. Then it strikes me, they are surrounded by relatives, friends, acquaintances, but wherever they may be, they form a place, a shelter of their own. The color I want is the invisible color of safety, fragile, temporary, but palpable as a hand grasping one's hand and leading one to harbor. Rita, that's the Jewish actress, a little tipsy, laughing, interrupts this reverie and puts an arm around me. Sharad, that midnight blue is gorgeous on you, but then everything turns gorgeous when you wear it. And look, we have a surprise for you. She points across the room. My eye skates over the faces of acquaintances, friends, strangers, then trips and falls headlong. With Sheila-di, it cannot be, but it is, and they are walking towards me. Sharad, that voice, a streak of silver in the hair. I give him my hand and say coolly, how are you? He remains silent, his gaze imbibing my face, those eyes. He arrived last night, says Sheila-di. We thought we'd surprise you. I smile politely. Lucky you were here for the performance. Brain benumbed, eyes bedazzled by the hotel's lights, years overworn, and my hand, unfortunately, my hand is warmed by memory. Well, I showed him that I'm no longer waiting. If he expected me to fall into his arms and collapse at his feet or even gaze back, he must be disappointed. But perhaps he didn't expect anything so dramatic. Perhaps I'm just a casual acquaintance to him. The time, the right time, has come and gone. Anger, shock, and yes, grief boil in me. A tear spills out as I reach my door and almost trip over a brown paper parcel on the threshold. I put it on the dining table and cut the string. This is a novel that Habib has written. A hefty manuscript, 2 words on its first page, for Sharad. The handwriting singes me as it once flashed knife-like from the only letter he ever wrote me. Okay, so now I'll go back to my first novel, which is also about memory. And unfortunately, this book is out of print. It's being reprinted now, so they don't have this for sale outside. And I want to talk about, other things that we have forgotten. So another thing that we have forgotten about our past is male-female friendship. So we know most friendships, of course, were between men and between women in the past. It was not okay for men and women to be friends. But there were also male-female friendships and conversations, mostly with courtesans, which were called tawayaf in North India, and different names in different parts of the country. And here's a quotation from the poet Ghalib, who talks about how he used to pass hours and hours talking with a courtesan, talking about poetry and things like that. Yeah. Okay, so this novel is about a girl called Nafis. She's a poet. She belongs to a courtesan household. So she lives in an almost all-female household. And she's a poet. And she has a bunch of friends, male and female. And she falls in love with a girl called Chapla, who is also I'm missing the right. So Nafis is a poet, and she falls in love with Chapla, who is also Tawaf and who is a dancer in 18th century Lucknow and Delhi. So this is the first Indian historical novel about a romance between women. So in the novel, again, there are 3 poets who are minor characters. They're friends of the heroines. I have translated these poets' works, so Urdu poets, so I know their work very well. Now, the interesting thing about these poets, it is late 18th century, late 18th, early 19th century. They're writing in Urdu. They're all Muslim. They write about love between women, love between men, and love between men and women. Today, it would not be possible for a Muslim poet writing in Urdu to write so openly about this. Okay, so we think that our world is always getting better and more progress. Okay, every day and every way things are getting better and better. No, they're not. Lots of things are also getting worse. So, all right, let me give an example of the male-female romance in the novel. In the novel, there is another courtesan called Bakshi, okay, and she's in love with a male poet called Hazrat. Now, where did I get this story? This is an actual story. It actually happened. This story is told in a long poem about this romance, which the poet called Jurrat wrote. Now, it's very similar to a Hindi movie romance. I'm sure you have seen Pakiza, where a woman falls in love with a courtesan, falls in love with a man, right? But in a Hindi movie, the difference now I want to emphasize, in a Hindi movie, if a courtesan, a tawaf, falls in love with a man, it has to end in marriage or it has to end in death. Anarkali ends with death, right? There's nothing in between, marriage or death. And I've written another book about same-sex marriage, which also has this kind of either marriage or death. That's what people look for. But in this novel, poem, it ends very differently. So in my book, which I made them characters in my book, also it ends in this way. How does it end? So first, when they are in love, the lady in charge of the courtesan Kotha, she doesn't approve of this. Why? Because that poet is very poor. Poets are all poor, no? And she wants this girl to be in love with a rich man to get money. So she says, what is this? You can't meet him. So both of them start pining away and they are going to die. Of course they're going to die. And so the lady in charge has to say, okay, I don't want her to die, so let him come again. Then what happens? Hazrat once more began to visit the house. Their mutual love continued to grow. Once again, he regularly came and went. Allah made them both happy. Notice that he'd say, Allah made a courtesan and this man happy. Those who were hypocrites now accepted the results. Mile aapas mein phir maashook aur aashik, that is the lover and the beloved, met once more. Just as God gave them happiness, may the whole world get happiness. What have I said or written here? The story of love is very long. Now he's making this a model for other people. He's saying as they got happiness, so all of us should get happiness. What is that happiness? They're not married, but they keep meeting. This guy keeps coming to the Kotha and meeting. Today, this would never be considered a model of love. So this is how things have changed. Okay, another feature of pre-British Indian culture that we have forgotten is that same-sex relationships before the British were not legally prohibited. They were not silenced in Hindu kingdoms and also in Muslim kingdoms, very importantly. In this book, we got translated extracts from works in 15 languages, from the Mahabharata and the Kama Sutra to the present, period of more than 2,000 years. And we found that same-sex love is being discussed in the Kama Sutra. It's very clear, it's being discussed. Sometimes there is some disapproval. Sometimes there is like trying to be neutral, just describing this is what happens. And sometimes it's actually celebratory. It's a lot of fun. When the British come, some of the Britishers who come, I should say, they really like this. They like the fact that there are courtesans, there's same-sex love, you can do all these things, which in England you couldn't do. In England at the time, and for many centuries before, you could be executed, especially men, would be executed if they got involved with another man. But in India, you could do it quite openly. So they were happy. But when they took over the rule of India in 1857, after crushing that the Great Revolt, then they passed this law, 1861, you know that, which prohibits the Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code, which makes it a punishable offense, a seriously punishable offense, right? And then that has just been changed in 2018. Now, this other book, On the Edge, I look at over a period of 100 years, how do things change? 100 years, things can change a lot. So from 1920s to 2020s, things have changed. That law has been removed. And so I look at how did Hindi writers show love, same-sex love between men or between women. So there are some famous writers here, Premchand, Gitanjali Shri, etc. And there are some less known writers. Like there was this novel published in 1947. When I say we have forgotten things, this was a totally forgotten novel, published by this Bihari woman, Asha Sahai, nobody has ever heard her name. I had a lot of difficulty finding this novel, a lot of difficulty, and I finally found it and could translate a part from it. She was a Gandhian also, and you know, Gandhi believes in celibacy. So a very interesting novel in which men and women are in love, women and women are in love, but nobody has any sex. It all remains completely celibate. So I thought this was great. Yeah, it's such fun. But they have very strong romantic feelings, you know. One woman actually says to another woman who is going to get married to a man, don't marry him. Why do you want a male partner? I'm here, I'm a female partner, and I will love you more than he does. So be my partner. She actually makes this proposal. So I thought this was pretty amazing for 1947. Now, when I say if you go back earlier, you find not only in literature, but also in art. Now, look at the statue. This is the god Kamadeva shooting an arrow at two women. It's a very huge and beautiful statue. Now, you look at the two women and look at the god, and look at the smile on all three faces. How blissful it is. It's really a stunning statue. So I wrote this book called Love's Right. From 1980 onwards, I don't know if you know about this, from 1980 onwards, you may know, those who are from Kerala especially, all over the country, there were these young women, mostly women, few men, but mostly women, who ran away together. They either got married or by Hindu rites, or they committed joint suicide if they were prevented from getting married. And I have like well over 200 cases. There must be many more which I don't have. Now the interesting thing about these girls from 1980 onwards is that they are low income. They don't know any English. They don't know any word like gay, lesbian, anything. They had no contact with any movement. They just had these feelings, and the feelings were that we either have to get married or we have to die. And in their suicide notes, we were talking about what happens after death this morning, right? In their suicide notes, they generally say, we can't be together in this birth, society is stopping us, so we will be together in the next life, in the next birth. They also have this feeling that they can't live without each other. So in India, my next book is going to be on rebirth, the idea of rebirth. And if you go back even to the 11th century in India, you find this idea that if you are very strongly attracted to something, some person, some place, or you hate something, you don't know why. Like say somebody comes in, you just don't like them at all. But then their twin sister comes in, you really like that person. Now why is that? So the Indian explanation has always been, this is because in a previous life we were connected in some way. And what I found very interesting is that this is the explanation given by these young women, but also the explanation given by the priests. I interviewed the Pandits, a Hindu priest who performed the marriages in many cases. And I said, like, why did you agree to do this? So one of them, he's a computer engineer in the day and a Pandit at night. He said, look, I thought about it. I have never heard of such a thing, but I thought about it. And I thought, look, in Hinduism, the Atman doesn't have any gender. Atman is not male or female, right? Now, these two, if they are so strongly determined to get married, despite all their society being against it, that means they are connected from a previous life. So I decided to do it. And if there is any papa in it, any demerit, I don't take the money. The money they give me, I don't use. I offer it to a Shiva temple in my village. So Shiva takes it on, right? And there are many such stories. Also, in 1975, there's a famous mathematician called Shakuntala Devi, you know. Now, she wrote the first book on homosexuality. It's called The World of Homosexuals, little book. In that, she went to the temple at Srirangam, and which is a very major temple, Srirangam, right? And she interviewed the chief priest. Srinivasa was his name, I forget the full name. Srinivasa Raghavacharya. Yeah, she interviewed him and she asked him, like, what do you think about these relationships? And he said, look, if two people are so strongly drawn to each other, they are connected from a previous life. First thing he said. Second thing he said was, which I thought very funny, which is that we have such a huge population explosion. So this is nature's way of controlling that. Yeah, that's what he said. Okay, so now let me talk about my first novel, which was called Memory of Light, about the two girls, Nafis and Chapla, who are in love. And when here I found that Urdu ghazals, now you all know the Urdu ghazals, right, which are in Hindi movies, basically. Chaudevi Ka Chand, there's a ghazal, for example, that song. There are lots of ghazals. Most of the ghazals we are used to in 20th century are like Begum Akhtar, if you've heard her. Most of them are about pining and being sad and being unhappy and not being able to get the person you want, and the person stands for God, so you can never get them, and all of that. Now that all is true, those ghazals are there. But there are also very funny, cheerful, erotic, playful ghazals from the 18th, 19th century. And these ghazals are about a lot of things. They are about love, they're about friendship, they're about fighting and quarreling, and they're not about God at all. So I call them non-mystical ghazals. They are about shopping, dressing up, markets, going to festivals, going to picnics, all of this. 18th century, this is really long ago. So I'll just read you one. Anyone knows Hindi Urdu? Is it worth reading this? You can? Okay, I'll read it in English as well. Now, Zanakhi was, at that time, Zanakhi was a word for a girl's girlfriend. Okay, Zanakhi, I'll come to why. Zanakhi ki, so one girl is speaking to another girl. When you translate in English, you can't get that gender, because I am speaking to you. I and you are not gendered. The verbs are also not gendered, but in Urdu, it's perfectly clear. Zanakhi ki rangat jawan peer sone ki, sarapa wo nazar aati hai ek tasveer sone ki, किनारी गिर्द यो चेहरे की उसकी जेब देती है, मुसव्वर जो कहती है तस्वीर की तहरीर सोने की, गले के हार तेरे हो रही हूँ ए लग्गा मैं, नहीं दरकार तुझको जाने मन जंजीर सोने की. I've highlighted the parts which show the gender of the speaker and the other girl. Okay, this is the translation, and this is, so I've put this in my novel. I translated, I found these poems. These poems had totally disappeared because by the end of the 19th century, they were considered to be obscene. This whole genre of poetry where women are speaking about other women was considered to be obscene and was hidden away in libraries. I had to go to a library and copy it out by hand, and the guy was looking suspiciously at me like, why is this woman looking at this old thing? That too in Urdu, and look at her in a sari and bindi is copying of, what is this? So he would come and try to read it over my shoulder, and thankfully he couldn't read, he couldn't understand it because the script writing in Urdu has changed a lot from 19th century to now. My girlfriend has a youthful complexion like yellow gold. From head to foot she looks like a picture of gold. Her scarf's border frames and adorns her face. Her words are shaped like artist's writing on a picture of gold. I've become the necklace round your neck, dear one. So my life, you don't need a chain of gold. This is by this poet, SAHITYA Khan Rangeen. Rangeen, colorful, that was his pen name. His dates are 1755 to 1835. Okay? And so in my novel, the two heroines sing this song together to each other because they're singers and dancers, they're courtesans, right? Just to give you an example of the manuscript. This is a manuscript by a poet called Nisbat, early 19th century. Beautiful illuminated manuscript, but it had disappeared completely. When I was looking for this poetry, I could only find a few lines by him, which were in print. This manuscript had disappeared. And then somebody in Pakistan went into a second-hand bookstore and found it, the whole manuscript. So it was that close to disappearing completely, but he found it, he scanned it, and kindly sent it to me so I could use some of these poems. Let me read a poem from this manuscript, okay? And see how clever and subtle it is. So it is erotic and sexual. It's between two women. But look at how delicately that is done. It leaves so much to your imagination, which the person, Hari Kumar, was saying in the morning, that it left to the reader's imagination. Zanakhi kya hi maze se ye kal guzari raat, balaएं हाथों ने मेरे जो ली तुम्हारी रात, balaएं हाथों की लेती रही मैं सारी रात. To take balaएं, you know, you must have seen it in the movies, you put your hands over the other person's head and do this, right? Means you're taking their troubles on yourself. Girlfriend, how delightfully we spent last night. My hands devoted themselves to you last night. I felt so devoted to my hands all night. Yeah. Now, there were words at this time in 18th century Urdu poetry, there were words for sex between women. The words are chapat, chapti, chapatbazi. These are some of the words. Chapat means to cling, to stick, something, right? And they're also there in the dictionaries in the 19th century. And women who are engaging in this activity are called chapatbaz. Okay, so it's a word. Now, what does baz mean? Baz means a game that you play, okay? And like you say, kabutarbazi, somebody who is interested in pigeons. Patangbazi, somebody who is interested in kites. Shatranjbazi, somebody who's interested in chess. So chapatbaz is women who are interested in chapti. So it's also a view of life. You know, nowadays when you meet someone, first thing you ask is, what do you do? Meaning, what work are you doing? That is not how people saw life in pre-British India. You are doing work, but that doesn't define you. What defines you is the games that you play, the things you do outside of work. That is what makes you you, because you chose to do that, right? In 1970s, there's a historian who interviewed some of the last courtesans in Lucknow, and they were still using this word, chapatbaz, right? So that's interesting. Another word was ilaichi, and this is a description of a ritual which two women would perform. The same poet, SAHITYA Khan Rangeen, I found it in his prose writing, he wrote about this. So two women each take a cardamom and break it open. They keep breaking the cardamoms. The one in whose cardamom there is an even number of seeds becomes the male, and the one in whose cardamom there's an odd number of seeds is compelled to become the female. If both get the same seeds, like both get an even number, they keep repeating the ritual till odd and even numbers emerge, and then the last line is the most interesting. Then they get married among their female companions. Married, the word shadi is used. And these women are then called ilaichi. The other interesting thing is they get married among their female companions, not to the whole world. They may be married to men, but among their female companions, they are known to be a couple. And there are various such rituals that women used to perform. So in my novel, two women characters get married by performing this ritual, which their female friends witness. So in the novel, I also depict a lot of other relationships, friendships, male-male love affairs, transgender characters, etc. I'll just read a little bit, the moment when they come together. And Chapla. As we looked down at the picture, our fingers touched, entwined, sent lightning coursing up my arm. Our hands opened, covered each other, closed, bone fierce against bone. A gust blew in from the gallery, set the little bells on the hookah tinkling, and the flame went out. In blessed darkness, we slid back on the divan against the wall. Her lips traveled up my arm. Moonlight showed me her face, mouth half open as if in agony. One instant suspended, then I grasped her face with both hands. Her gasp as our mouths met and held goes through me like a shock as I write. I should say the novel is Nafis's memories. Nafis is 50 years old now, and she's recounting this memory from her youth. This romance is all over. She's remembering it. So it's a novel about memory. And of course, when you remember something, you may remember wrong, right? Also, you know this, that, or maybe you're too young to know this, that you remember something, but then somebody else, you think you remember it very clearly. But somebody else who was there tells you, no, but this also happened. And when they tell you that, you remember, yeah, it did happen, I just forgot it. So our memories are not reliable, I should say that. Yeah. I translated this novel into Hindi and under the name Pariyon Ke Beech. Pariyon Ke Beech means among fairies. First, I wanted just to tell you something, the difference between languages. I wanted this title Among Fairies for the English novel. But the publisher, who is Penguin, said no. If you say Among Fairies, that sounds like a children's story in English. It can't be. In Hindi, you can say Pariyon Ke Beech because Pari means a beautiful person, any beautiful person. That was an old meaning, and it still conveys itself in Hindi even today. Okay, there were also poems, Urdu poems, by men speaking to men. So I'll read this one. This one is actually my favorite poet, Inshallah Khan Insha, 1756 to 1817. Your cheek is made for kisses. Why shouldn't I ask for kisses? Bosa is the word for kiss. Kyun na kije sawal bose ka. When my mouth touched your lips, they turned red with kisses. Locks falling over that face say we have woven a net of kisses. Now, up to this point, it's I and you. You don't know the gender of the other person. The speaker is, of course, male, but you don't know the next verse gives it away. In the morning, your cheeks were blue due to last night's thoughts of kisses. Now, do you understand? What does that mean? In the morning, your cheeks were blue. How do you know this is a man being spoken to? It's facial hair. Yes, it's facial hair, which in the morning your cheeks are blue. This can't be a girl, right? Your cheeks are blue due to it. Then the next line makes it even clearer. Jaan nikle hai o Mia, de dal, aaj vada na tal, bose ka. Mia is the word for Mr., cannot be to a woman. Oh Mr., I'm dying, do give them to me. Today, give me your promised kisses. This is a fresh sapling, and look, it blossomed with the bliss of kisses. This I won't explain, but I think you can understand. Right? So this is how subtle the writing is, and how really brilliant. Okay. Another feature of pre-modern culture that we have forgotten, Indian culture, is the importance of courtesans. Courtesans were very important, and I've written a book about it. This is the book, Gender, Sex and the City. And I wrote 2 books actually about courtesans. Who were the courtesans? They were not sex workers. Now, if you view Hindi movies like Pakiza, you think that a courtesan is just a prostitute. No, courtesan is different. A prostitute or sex worker is one who will sleep with any man for cash, right? A courtesan, they had relationship with one man. It was what we would now call serial monogamy. If that relationship ends, they might have a relationship with another man. But it's one at a time. They knew who the fathers of their children were. And they were very well-educated, accomplished women. This is from ancient India onwards. In ancient India, they were known as Nagarvadhu. If you look at Sanskrit drama, 4th century Sanskrit drama, you will find courtesans are the heroines. They are the first romantic heroines. There's a writer called Sanjay Gautam who has written a book on the Kama Sutra, and he says that courtesans are the first romantic heroines in India. The time I was writing about, which is the 18th century, 1780 to 1870, these women were what we would call glamour girls of the city. They set the fashion in their dress, in their style, in their cosmetics, in their jewelry. And how did people get to know about them? The male poets wrote poems about them, praising them, sometimes by name in the poems. And then the courtesans sang these poems in gatherings. So now it's a mutual advertisement. The poet writes about you, the courtesan does the dance and sings the song. So she's publicizing the poet. The courtesans and the male poets, they had the same patrons, kings, nobility, very rich men, etc. And they performed in public, both of them. So, yeah, so that's who they were. And just to sum up, they were not sex workers, they were female intellectuals, they were poets, musicians, dancers. They are the ones who kept alive the classical arts like Bharatanatyam or Kathak or whatever. They were the colleagues and friends, and if you read the poetry you can see they were the colleagues and the friends of the male poets and musicians. They were different from conventional women because they lived in female-dominated households and they had matrilineal inheritance. Matrilineal inheritance means their property. These were the women who owned a lot of property. Their property passed from mother to daughter, or aunt to niece if they didn't have children. And they often also had relationships with each other because they're living in a female house. So just to show you in a painting, look at this courtesan. She's explaining a dance posture to a European who is dressed in Indian dress and with a hookah, and she's giving him like a dance demonstration now you nowadays have, right? She's explaining the dance to him. All right, I wanted to also say this is not just India. This is all over the world up to the early 20th century. Here's an example from English courtesan, 18th century, Harriet Wilson. She's writing to the Prince of Wales, that is the king's son who is going to be the next king. She says, "Sir," he has asked her to come and meet him. She says, "Sir, to travel 52 miles in this bad weather, merely to see a man with only the given number of legs, arms and fingers," she doesn't mention what she means, but only you are the same as any other man, "would be madness in a girl like myself, surrounded by humble admirers who are ever ready to travel any distance for the honor of kissing the tip of her little finger. But if you can prove to me that you are one bit better than any man who may be ready to attend my bidding, I'll start for London directly. So if you can do anything better in the way of pleasing a lady than ordinary men, write directly. If not, adieu, goodbye, Monsieur le Prince. I won't say yours by day or night or any kind of light because you are too impudent." Look at this way of writing, the cheekiness. And it's this cheekiness which is the charm of the courtesan. No one else, no man and no woman could speak to the prince like this. Another famous French courtesan, Léon de Pougy. She lived into the early 20th century. She was a dancer, actor. And here she is with another woman. She had a love affair with men and women. The other woman is an American, Natalie Barney, and there are photographs of them together. Another one, Emma Hamilton. She was a courtesan and erotic dancer. These all came from very humble origins. They were poor girls. She married Lord Hamilton, became an aristocrat, Lady Hamilton, and then after the marriage, she became the lover of Lord Nelson. You know who he is. He was a major British general who fought the Battle of Waterloo. Yeah, and there are many portraits of her. This is just one of them. Okay. So much of this literature, which is about, which is about courtesans, has been forgotten. And so in my books, why has it been forgotten? Because how many of us actually read these books? How many of us, have anyone read the Kama Sutra? And even when you do read the Kama Sutra, I also looked into this. The Kama Sutra was translated into English in the 19th century, but by the 20th century, people had become really ashamed and embarrassed about it. People had become ashamed of all these aspects of Indian literature. Why? Because the British rulers found it to be very obscene, immoral, etc. So everybody, Hindus and Muslims, became ashamed of their own culture. Muslims were ashamed of polygamy. Hindus were ashamed, that time Hindus were also polygamists. Hindus were ashamed of polygamy and of polyandry because in some places women had more than one husband. Both were ashamed. Muslims became really ashamed of these ghazals, which were all about love and wine and all this. They said, no, we should write like Wordsworth about nature and social reform. They actually say this. Urdu literary critics say this. They also become ashamed of idolatry. Hindus become ashamed of worshipping so-called idols. So then they become ashamed of worshipping many gods and goddesses. All this becomes really embarrassing. When I used to teach in Miranda House, I was teaching the Bible as part of literature, and I would ask the students are 98% Hindus, I would ask them which is better, one god or many gods and goddesses? And they would all say one god. Why? Because they are just brainwashed into thinking that. So then I would ask them why, and they couldn't answer. So then we would discuss it, and by the end of the class they were happy to find that yes, having many gods and goddesses who are all one but are also many, that is actually good. So they would so we have forgotten these texts. I was giving you the example of the Kama Sutra. The Kama Sutra has a whole chapter on men who desire men. So there is a chapter in that there are men. Kama Sutra, he divides it it into two types. There are men who desire women and there are men who desire men. Then he further subdivides it because ancient Indian texts love to make categories of everything. So men who desire men, there are two types. One is masculine appearing with beards and mustaches. They desire men, but they have beards and mustaches. Another one is feminine appearing. So the men who desire men who are feminine appearing, they are very feminine, very graceful, they wear, So now he says the feminine appearing men, they can find other men. But the masculine appearing ones, how are they going to find other men? Then he gives suggestions. Vatsyayan, who is the author of Kama Sutra, gives suggestions. He says, you can become a flower seller, you can become a masseur, one who gives massage, you can become a hairdresser, and then you can meet other men and see what do they like. Then he goes further, and this is Kama Sutra, 4th century Sanskrit text. He says, now, if you are, let's say, giving a massage, okay, you're giving a massage to another man, you want to know what is he interested or not. Now give the massage, go up his leg gradually and see if he objects to anything. If he doesn't object, then it's okay, keep going ahead. And then he gives a description of oral sex between men, which is very explicit. He's giving instructions basically, or describing it, or just describing what is going on. He says, and gives an example which all Indians know, how do you suck a mango? So that is the way you should go ahead. Now, in the 20th century, Kama Sutra, people removed that chapter. That chapter was just not there. They removed it completely. And there were few translators. There was one translator who translated the whole text into Hindi. He kept the chapter, but in his preface, he says, look, don't think that what is being said here is telling you what to do. No, it is a warning. It's a warning text telling you, showing all this to tell you, don't do this. That's what it is. And the line which I like best from the Kama Sutra, that chapter ends with this line. So he is thinking about it and he says, look, is it good to do this or not good? He says it depends. It depends on the place where you are, on your community's opinions, and how you feel also. All these things, it depends on that. So some people say it's bad, some people say it's good, but what do I think? I think who does what, when, where and why, who knows? I think it's absolutely brilliant because actually it's true that in terms of sex, who does what, when, where and why, they're not going to tell you, and who knows what they're doing actually. So I thought that's absolutely brilliant insight. Okay, so let me come to the end. I just wanted to end with my translations. I mentioned Mahadevi Verma. She is a minor character. She's a very famous Hindi writer you may have read in school. And these are her two books, which I translated. One is My Family. It's about her animal companions. She never got married. She got married as a small child, refused to live with her husband, and she lived as a single woman, educationist, principal of a women's college, and she traveled on her own. She had many friends, women, men, all. And she had all these animals, really interesting animals that she rescued. A deer, a squirrel, a rabbit, a cow, all these animals she had. And that, she says, is her family. And she writes about each one and brings out the character of that individual rabbit. For instance, the rabbit is very interesting. This rabbit, we normally think rabbits are very timid and docile, right? But this rabbit is very aggressive. And he is always biting and trying to attack and kill others. And she thinks, why is it? So she tries to psychologically analyze this rabbit, that when she found this rabbit because when it was a baby, a cat entered into the rabbit burrow and killed the mother and killed all the babies, only this one survived. So she says, if this rabbit had grown up with a mother, he may not have been like this, but because he started his life with this violence, he became violent in self-defense, right? Portraits from Memory is another one I just translated from HarperCollins. And in this she gives sketches, little sketches, life stories of all the people, many people she knew. Most of them are poor people, low-income group people, from a potter to very interesting stories. And what I found from these stories is how, again, we have forgotten how poverty, the nature of poverty has changed in India. It has changed a lot. Now most of the poor people have cell phones, they have TVs, they have refrigerators, most of the working people. In those days, no, it's abject poverty, and yet, this is 1920s, 30s, 40s, yet she brings out the dignity of these individuals and how they are, how generous they are, even to her. She is like, there's a vegetable vendor who's a blind guy, but he finds out what vegetables does she like, and he wants to bring them to her. When she's sick, he says, I want to see you. And she thinks, poor man, he can't see me at all because he's blind, but still he comes and he talks to her. So that's just one example. So yeah. Okay, I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for that profoundly moving session. You've shown us that literature is not just a collection of stories, but a living, breathing archive of who we are. It has been a masterclass in how emotion and imagination intersect. Now we request Dr. Ruth Vanita to kindly sign one of her books for us. For the camera to get the photo, let's move a bit to the center. Thank you. Now I request Professor Dr. L. Kavita Nair, HOD, Department of Language, Culture and Society, to please felicitate Dr. Ruth Vanita.
The center. Just center this one. No, you can come this way.
The aspect you talked about is so different and it's not usually talked about. How did you get this idea to talk about it and how did you get interest in these areas?
You mean like in same-sex love or other things?
Yes.
Okay, same-sex
She can't
love?
even bring herself to tell that.
Huh?
She can't even bring herself to tell that.
No, because I've written on many topics. Like even courtesans is an unconventional topic, so I've written on many things. I've written on the Sanskrit epics. I didn't have that book here, but I wrote on the Dharma of Justice in the Ramayana and Mahabharata. That's one, a recent book. But that has nothing to do with same-sex love. Okay, in same-sex love, how did I get interested in it? Well, because I'm married to a woman now. So, and when I was studying in Delhi University, I and my co-author, Salim Kidwai, we had studied at Delhi University, but nobody had ever mentioned the word or anything about it, though we were reading writers like Shakespeare. Shakespeare wrote most of his sonnets to another man. I've just done a book on Shakespeare as well. It has just come out last year. So it's not on this topic, but I work on Shakespeare. So I'm giving you one example, but many others. E.M. Forster, we were taught. Nobody ever mentioned the fact that he was homosexual. Nobody mentioned it. So we thought that there must be, as far as Western literature is concerned, a lot of scholars had already worked on it. Right? But on Indian literature, there was nothing. And we thought there must be something in Indian literature. We have such a long history in so many languages. Something must be there. So we must find out what it is. So it was an attempt to educate ourselves. Or for me at least, it was an attempt to educate myself. I read the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, all the Purans. I got a lot of interesting material from the Purans. I read the Kama Sutra, I read the Kritivas Ramayana, various versions of the Ramayana, the Bengali Ramayana, Kritivas Ramayana, is still the most popular Ramayana. In that there are two women, two widows of a king. After he dies, they have a relationship in some manuscripts of the text, not in all manuscripts. And they produce a child. One of them becomes pregnant. This is 14th century, okay? And I have asked a lot of scholars. There is no such story anywhere in the world of two women having a relationship and one of them gets pregnant by the blessings of the gods, miraculously. This is no such story. It's a uniquely did story. So it shows the imagination of the author. He could have shown the child being born miraculously in so many ways. In the Mahabharata, Ramayana, children are born in all sorts of ways. Yeah? You don't need to do this. Yes. But he did this because he's interested in that. He's interested in seeing, okay, two women they are married to the same man. Now what is the relationship between those co-wives? I've written about this also. You are virtually married to each other because you're going to spend your whole life together. I know real life cases too. After the man dies, the two co-wives continue living together and they raise the children together. So the author would have seen children having more than one mother, the co-wives raising them together. Also the sister-in-law, your bhabhi helps you, you raise children together, right? So you have seen co-wives or women raising children together. The child has more than one mother. You know, like in Tamil you say chitappa, chitama. So they are also your father and mother and small father, right? So he would have thought, what if the woman can become pregnant with another woman, and how will it be? And it's a wonderful story. There are more than one version, so we got it translated. So in that story, for instance, the child whom they produce is Bhagiratha. You know Bhagiratha, right? The one who brings Ganga from. So it's so wonderful because Bhagiratha is born to these women. Now in other parts of India, the story is Bhagiratha is just born to his father and mother. In this, only in Bengal in the 14th century, this story is there. He has two mothers. And when he goes to school, all the children tease him and said, your father was dead. So your mother, you are a Jaraja, means a version of illegitimate child. Your mother must have had a male lover, right? So he goes and hides in the Kopgraha. You know what Kopgraha is? Like a kaivan, the anger room. He goes and hides. And then his mother comes and says, what are you doing? He says, like, who was my father? You haven't told me. Tell me. Then she tells the whole story that by the blessings of the gods, this is what happened, right? And he laughs and he says, oh, if that is the case, then I'm going to heaven to get the Ganga down from there. And the most interesting thing in this story is that the word Bhagiratha, now you know in Sanskrit, every word has about 100 meanings. So I looked in the dictionary, the word Bhaga has many, many meanings, right? But this poet says, who's a great poet with the Bhasa, he says, Bhaga, one of the meanings of Bhaga is the vulva, the women's genitals. He says, because this child was born of pleasure between two women, therefore he is called Bhagiratha. And it's not correct, this etymology probably, but he just says, I'm a great poet and I'm telling you this is what it means. So I thought this is just, our literature is just wonderful, and this is all what we have forgotten. So it was our attempt to educate ourselves and bring this, because most Indians had, and many still have, the idea that homosexuality is a Western import from the West. No, it's not. It's the fear of it that is imported from the West. In itself, it has always been there in our literature. And then even this other book I wrote, Love's Right, about the young women who run away from 1980 onwards to get married or commit suicide. Now in 1980, there was no same-sex marriage anywhere in the world. Okay, the first place was Netherlands in 2001. These young women have the idea of getting married from 1980s onwards. And in many cases, that families actually agree and actually arrange the ceremony with them. I have many cases of that kind. So there is something about Indian culture that is accepting of many things, or was accepting of many things. And though after the British period, it changes from the 1820s to 1920s, in that 100 years, it turns around 360 degrees. But we still, the memories of those traditions are there somewhere, hidden. Otherwise, how was it, I was always asking this question, how is it that some families allowed these girls to get married, and they even participated? There is some memory of the idea of marriage, that it is a union between two souls, what the priest said. It's remarkable. Yeah.
I have another question. I've written about the mental status of these homosexual, whatever they faced or whatever they had to face due to society, and what they feel as a person.
In the 21st century, you can actually go to YouTube and see videos made by some of these young girls. When I wrote this book in 2005, there were no such videos. Now you can go and see videos where these young girls, for example, two village girls from a UP town called Hamirpur, one of them, father is a policeman, and these two girls wanted to get married to each other. They got married to men, they left those men, they wanted to marry each other, families obviously. Then they went to the registrar of marriages and said, we want to marry, can you, the registrar of marriages said, no, I can't do it. So then they wrote a contract. Now any two people can enter into a contract. They signed a contract for each other. They went outside the office and they garlanded each other, totally Hindi-speaking girls. You can listen to their video on YouTube. They garlanded each other, they did the Jayamala, and then now they were living in the village the policeman father actually was supportive, so they lived there. And they asked the government, they didn't know anything about any movement, anything. They just asked the government that you should help us also and give us employment Fascinating story. And these girls are from all over the country. They are from tribals, they are from Dalits, they are fisher women, they are factory women, they are students, they are across the board. And there were these two women, Tingring Basumatari and Roinati Basumatari, tribal women in northeast India. In the village, they were beaten up, they were given a lot of trouble, they had to leave the village. And they went from village to village, they couldn't settle down anywhere. Finally, they reached one village which accepted them, and they lived there. They've lived there for many, many years together. And then the most interesting thing, they were interviewed by a journalist in an Israel. Most interesting thing is when there was an MLA elections and the candidates came, the other villagers asked the candidate, look, these two are our neighbors and they have no legal rights. Can you get some legal rights for them? And and the candidates, being candidates, they said, okay, we'll think about it, and they tried. And then when Roinati, the girl, one of the girls, women, is interviewed, she says, look, we know they are just saying this, but we have hope. What else do we poor people have except hope? We can only hope for something to happen. But they are living there, they are fine. One is a domestic worker, the other works in the fields, a field laborer. That's it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mom.
Yeah.
Can I get an autograph from you?
Sure, sure. Later I'll sign whoever wants to buy. Yeah.
Now, is that all the question? Are there many
Other
people who
questions?
would like to have their books signed? Just one?
Okay, so no questions around?
Yeah, I think. Oh, there's
Yeah.
Ma'am, I just wanted to know your opinion on the fact that the whole concept of homosexuality or same-sex relationships has become now a taboo, if not worldwide, but mostly in India, and they are not encouraged. Is this for the people's convenience because they want to spread their ideology? But as you've mentioned multiple times, and you are advocating for the fact that this was actually there in the past. So, and a lot of people who are educated in this field, the Hindu scholars, are commenting this. So, why is this happening and why exactly?
See, most Hindus don't know Hinduism. They haven't read any Hindu text. How many people have read Mahabharata? Have you read? It's 18 volumes, and most people haven't read it. Even the full Ramayana, they know from TV, fine, that's better than nothing, but they haven't read the whole Ramayana, right? So most people haven't read. Kama Sutra, forget, nobody has read. All these books I'm mentioning, most people haven't read, right? They may hear the Bhagavad, when it is, but it is in Sanskrit. You don't really understand it. So when you don't know, then you only know your customs. And the custom in your society is this is frowned upon. Not just this, many things are frowned upon. So you think it's wrong. But if you actually read, when I read the Mahabharata second time, I was amazed by the kind of debates about everything. Nothing is taboo. You can ask any question and debate anything. For example, I always thought this idea of veganism, that you don't eat any animal products, including milk and all that, this seems like a Western idea. That's what I thought. It came from there. But in the Mahabharata, they actually debate it and they say, should we be taking the milk away from the cows, which is meant for the cows, and drinking it? So they have a whole debate around this. Of course, they have debates on vegetarianism as well, on cruelty to animals. They say we shouldn't be enslaving humans and we also shouldn't be enslaving animals. So there is a grocer who gives this whole speech on it. Wonderful, wonderful talk. So everything is up for debate, everything is debated. And we don't know this, I didn't know this, I only found out after reading. It's because we have forgotten. We've forgotten. Hinduism has so many books, it's not one book you read, right? So we have forgotten our own traditions and we just don't know about it. So this book is an attempt, Same-Sex Love in India and even the other one on the edge, is an attempt to make those available and accessible to people. And many people have told me that, yeah, you have given me, gay people, that you have given me back my culture. I didn't know this. So yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
I'm writing about all of this, not just same-sex relationships, but also Protestant. Ma'am, what gives you the motivation to keep writing about this when there are so many people in this same field who frown upon it and throw dirt on your name?
I have to say I haven't faced a lot of opposition. No, I haven't faced a lot of opposition. No, I don't. I think Indian society is always very curious and anxious to learn about new things. When it came out, the book has been very well received. It's now, parts of it are being taught in colleges as part of the syllabus. Even Love's Right, the one on marriage, is also being, parts of it are being taught. No, I haven't faced opposition. And what gives me the motivation to write about all these various things is just joy. There's no point doing work if it doesn't bring you Ananda. It's about Ananda, right? Tulsidas says this in the Ramayana, that he is writing for his own self-satisfaction, right? If it doesn't bring you joy, then there is no point doing the research, no point doing the work. So it's to discover these new things, and I discovered so much, not just in this, in many fields. There's nothing like it. It may not bring you brownie points. I don't use any language of theory. I don't write about Foucault or Derrida, and I don't even read them. I can't waste my time. I just read the primary sources, whether it's in English literature or Indian literature. I read the actual book, and nothing, that may not be the most rewarded thing in the academy. You may not get the greatest, you may not become very famous professor, but I want to write in a way that ordinary people can understand. I don't want to write for 2.5 academics to read. Because who reads academic articles? Literally 2.5 people have written academic books, I know it. Nobody is reading it. But I want to write general fiction. My books are mostly published by Penguin, so it's for general readers. Everybody should be able to understand. And that is a lot of fun. That's what it's for.
Let's give it a big round of applause.